Okay, so I want to use this outpost as my primary shipyard basically for the rest of the game. At least that is the plan. So let's take a look at the perks. We benefit a lot from the adjacency bonus. Right now we have up to 3 perks, and if I unlock this we have 6 possible perks, and I can even get another one because I haven't placed an outpost in this sector yet, but the other 3 give a bonus perk for each of them. So we are quite flexible with this outpost and can choose a lot of flavor or extra perks which are very useful but which weren't too critical for my first shipyard. So let's start with the laser manufacture and the shield manufacture. These two are a must-have in my opinion. I am not bothering anymore with shipyards who aren't able to produce lasers and shields. It's just too complicated in my opinion. Then I'm obviously using the parallel tasks perk to speed things up. Then I want the insurance policy to prevent any bad events. And then we can take the extra engine tuning, which makes our ships slightly bit faster. It's only a tiny bonus, but always nice to have. And with the extra perk, I may go for the missile manufacture. We will see. We don't need to produce our missiles at the shipyard, but it could be nice. I will reconsider that later, but for now let's set up the logistics for that. Once you have 2 outposts which are using the same types of resources, things can get a bit more complicated. Up until now we only had this shipyard here, my initial sector, and we had something similar going on for some time now with the station construction. I have outsourced that to my mining sector, but have been occasionally building some factories in my original sector too, because it doesn't have the cheap stations perk, but it has a bit of experience with factory construction. So that is the second next best place to produce stations. If my primary station construction place is at its limit and I want to produce stations faster. And I have handled this problem by simply buying the required components here, and the other station construction parts have basically been piled up by this sector. So it's visiting all the other factories and grabbing the parts it needs. And for the shipyard we had something similar, so all my ship crafting components have been gathered by my initial sector, which was the only place where I'm building ships. So if you take, for example, down here, I have 3 hull plating facilities, and there is only one type of ship in the entire game which is allowed to take hull plating out of these facilities. And that have been agents from this outpost here. So no trader is allowed to take them, none of the local agents from down here, only the agents from this outpost. And that way I made sure that all of these critical ship construction parts are ending up in this outpost, my entire production. And then I can decide what I want to do with them once they are there. Now that we have a second shipyard, we have to adjust that. And I want to make this the primary shipyard, and this is supposed to become a secondary shipyard. So I will most likely build almost all the time in this sector, and only when I need more ships then I will activate this shipyard and consume resources here. So the first thing I want to do is to shift the logistics away from the original shipyard to the new primary shipyard, so that the new primary shipyard is the only one who is taking the components, the ship crafting components, out of the factories, which are all over in the game world. So let's start by simply copying the logistical templates. I'm just saving the agent and the trader preset. From the initial shipyard and apply them to the new one. That's the first step. So we load all these jobs. The food doesn't match, but we will adjust that later. Right now I just want to make sure that the ship crafting part settings are correct. So for the new primary shipyard, it is it's correct that he can access all reachable factories. I will raise the worker range for this outpost to the maximum, just like I did for the initial shipyard. It also had this very high range, and I will leave that for now. But we are going to change the import jobs for the ship crafting components, because we no longer want the secondary shipyard to grab them from all factories. What I want is a very sophisticated system that I can use all the way to the end game. And instead of letting the new secondary shipyard grab resources from all factories in the game world, it's only gonna get the resources which are bleeding over from the primary shipyard. Only the ones the primary shipyard doesn't need should be available to this shipyard. And I also don't want to pile resources up. I only want a small stock, which is also balanced, so that I don't end up with computers and missing hull plating and stuff like that. So how do we do that? Well, we can start with setting up the hull plating, because that is the most bulky component, and then use that as a reference for all the other stuff. What do I mean by that? Well, let's check how many hull plating does fit into an agent. I'm using my standard agent ship. Can fit about 3,000 units of hull plating. That would be one cargo load of a single agent making a trip. So let's change the import job for hull plating on the secondary shipyard. And we no longer want the factories, but the new primary shipyard to be the source. Was Emperor Mines, yeah. Now I'm limiting the cargo load instead of going with the maximum amount. We're gonna set the 3,000 units from the agent, what the agent can carry. It's more important for the other stuff, especially the computers, but I'm doing this for all three types of goods. So when this job gets valid, when the agent is getting more hull plating, it will always only load 3,000 units. that is the maximum it will grab. And then let's quickly update this job. Yeah, now we have to check what we can do with those 3,000 units. It's basically enough, it's not quite enough to build this Terran frigate. And I would like to build that in the secondary shipyard, so we would need at least 2 loads. So 6,000 units of hull plating would be the maximum that we want in this outpost. So let's adjust the import job to be valid until we have 6,000 units. Then it will stop and the agents won't grab more from the primary shipyard. And then I will set a limit. A minimum stock level in the primary shipyard, which needs to be there for the secondary shipyard to be allowed to grab hull plating from it. And I know that the Terran frigate, which was 3,800 units of hull plating, about 5 of them will be enough, the same value like a battleship that we are going to build more in the end game. So that is the minimum amount that I want to have in the primary shipyard at all times. So I will start with the basic load, 3,000 units. And we want to have 5 of those, because it also will get cheaper when the outpost levels up, then the ships will become less expensive. But 5 loads is basically what I want to leave in the primary shipyard. And I'm adding 1 extra because the agent will obviously grab 3,000 units. So to end up with the 15,000 that we want to keep at all times, we need to set it to 18,000. So update this job. This was the hull plating. And the 3,000 units are a average credit value of 60,000 credits. And now you will see why this is important. If we go to the quantum tubes, we are going to do the same thing. Since hull plating is more bulky than quantum tubes, I know that I can always fit the same amount of average value in quantum tubes into the same freighter type. And I'm limiting the load for quantum tubes to the same credit value as the load for hull plating, but it's less bulky, so it could fit more, but I'm still limiting it to keep it nice and balanced. We're also going with those 6,000 units, so 2 loads is the maximum that we want to haul in. We're targeting the outpost, no, not the factory, the outpost. And we're going again with the 5 loads of minimum stock in the primary shipyard, and then 1 extra, the 18,000. And now for the computers. They are going to be a bit more different. So 1 load of 60,000 credit worth to match the other parts are 715 units. I want to import 2 loads again, so 715 times 2. Again from the new primary shipyard as the source. And the minimum stock is again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loads and 1 extra. And then we are going with the crystals. For some reason I had 2 import jobs. I will just delete the other one and go with this one. So I also want the crystals to be hauled from the primary shipyard. And we're just going with the same credit value, even if that is a bit... Yeah, let's just go with 1000. Two times. We probably don't need that much, but I'm just basing the crystals around a bit more than the other parts. 1000 units. It's a bit more than 60,000 credits, but doesn't matter. Want the outpost. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loads. Minimum stock. And now the entire supply for ship parts of our old shipyard is based on the stock level that the new shipyard has. And since there are no parts in the new shipyard, this small red star here indicates that this job is not valid. And what I need to do now is move the parts that are in the secondary shipyard, move them over. And that would be a lot of tedious work, and it's easier to just let a courier handle that with a loop. So I'm simply telling one of those large transports to load at my old shipyard, load up computers, maximum, and then load up hull plating, the maximum, and the same for quantum tubes. And then simply unload at the new shipyard. I almost forgot the crystals. Of course, we also want to move them over. So I adjusted the courier list and restarted him. And even for a TL it's going to take some time, especially the hull plating is incredibly bulky. But once he has hauled all the parts from this shipyard to the new one, the new system is in place, and the agents will use any excess resources to feed them to the secondary shipyard. And we can always build in our primary shipyard. That's going to be the one that will level up very far. And it will also act as a temporary storage. We will pile our resources here. But later I might set up a something like a warehouse sector where we can use where we can pile up our resources and trade with the Argon especially. But I need to establish a very secure location without other factions in range, and then we can feed special components to them. Right now they have a shortage in... Oh no, it has resorted. they were always in need for computers, but if they have a strategic shortage again, then we can easily feed them resources. If we have a dedicated warehouse sector, that's going to be more long-term strategy.